Welcome to Leaders of the West, a podcast for innovators and changemakers. I'm your host, Jessie Jarvis, the founder of the West, and I'm sitting down with agriculturalists, entrepreneurs, executives, and everyone in between with the goal of digging into the strategies, mindsets, and lessons that have been crucial to the success of ag and Western. Whether you're carrying on the next generation of your family's operation, starting something from scratch, or determined to climb up the leadership ladder, we're going to inspire you to continue to dream big, growing not just you, but the future of agriculture and Western as a whole. Let's go. Well, hello there, and welcome to this week's episode of Leaders of the West. As always, I am beyond grateful to have you guys here listening to this week's episode. I will tell you what, anytime that you guys send us a message or an email or a text about how much you loved an episode or really related to a guest or were introduced to a guest that you had never heard of before or had something that just really resonated with you or that you related to, and you share that with us, that truly means the world. It means the world to me. It means the world to our entire Of the West podcasting team. And I will say that over the last few weeks or the last few months, we have had an overwhelming amount of those messages. And I just want to take a minute to say thank you guys for that, because those little things absolutely make a difference in our life and in our business. But that being said, you've probably gathered by now that today's episode is a solo episode. And I will say today's episode is going to be a little bit different than our other episodes, mainly because I feel like our other episodes always have some specific takeaway or topic, if you will. And really the purpose of today is I feel like I just kind of want to have a conversation with you guys and share a lot of what we have been up to, both personally and professionally, over the last couple of months, because it has been an absolutely wild ride. And up until now, I kind of feel like I've just been like barely keeping my head above water because we've been in such busy seasons for such a long period of time. And now I feel like I'm kind of standing up in the shallow section of the pool. I'm not really even worried about my head being above water because half of my body is above water. And it's a really good feeling. But because we've been so busy, I haven't necessarily done the best job of sharing, what we've been up to, again, both in our personal lives and on the business side of things. So I'm going to break that down. And there are a couple of things that I do want to share as it relates to managing our time, which is something that I have been heavily focused on, again, because we have been so busy. So let's go back to the beginning of the year. February, we launched the directory. Right after we launched the directory, we went to Fort Worth for Careers in Cowtown. We came back from that. And because we had been so focused on the launch of the directory and then being out of town for a week, I spent the next couple of weeks just kind of catching up on all of those other things that needed to be done, but hadn't necessarily gotten done just due to time. So that puts us in the middle of March, which is also in the thick of our calving and our branding and the season when we sell our calves. So it's an insanely busy time for us, as it is on most operations. But things really overlap there because we've got brand new calves on the ground. We still have yearlings in our feedlot. We're also trying to brand our heifer pair at home, and all of those seasons really overlap. So it makes for a lot of work for us. So we made it through March, and then we're usually done branding by about April 10th, which is also the day that our irrigation water comes into the ditch. So where we live in Idaho, I think that we get probably anywhere from 11 to 13 inches of rain each year on average. That is very dry. So if you want to grow any kind of a crop or pasture, whether that's for a horse or a cow, you have to have irrigation water. And the irrigation district that we're part of, water always comes in the ditch around the 10th of April, and then it goes out of the ditch around the 10th of October. So for 6 months there, you have water in the ditch. But one thing about our water is it's really expensive. And it doesn't necessarily matter if you're going to use it on the first day or if you're not going to use it for the first month, you still pay for your 6 months of water. So it's really important that when the water comes into the ditch, you are ready to use it because water is gold. In order for us to get everything wet that we have as far as irrigated ground, it takes us about 2 to 3 weeks for that to happen. So we have pivots, we have hand lines, we have horse pastures that we still irrigate with corrugates and a shovel. And the beginning of the season is always the most difficult because things have been laid off for 6 months, right? So gaskets maybe leak, or, you've got holes in pipe and that you didn't necessarily realize. So you're trying to fix all of that. You've got to dig new ditches because we've had cows in on these pastures all winter. And so it just takes a lot of work to really get things going. Once we get things going, it's a lot easier. But That takes us from the 10th of April to the end of April. At the end of April, then we're going to start putting all of our bulls out because we start calving around the 1st of February. So we put our bulls in around the 1st of May. So all of these seasons have an overlap period, which can be really stressful. But what has made it even more stressful for us is at the end of April, I had the opportunity to go to Denver for a week. I was chosen as one of the members of the 2024 Trailblazers program that's developed by the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. So there are 10 people in this cohort, and we represent commercial operations, purebred operations, backgrounders, feed yards, animal nutritionists, butchers, cattle buyers, like literally every aspect of the beef supply chain that there possibly is. We represent it. And what's really cool too is all of the members of this cohort come from different parts of the country. So there's somebody from Iowa, Kentucky, California, Montana, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Texas, Kansas, Washington, and then obviously myself from Idaho. So the purpose of this program is just to develop stronger spokespeople for the beef industry as a whole. So throughout the year, we meet both virtually and in person. And our meeting in Denver was the first time we'd gotten to all meet together in person, but we received this really in-depth training to just become expert communicators and excel in media interviews, speaking engagements, whether that's, as a keynote or on a panel, and just to become more well-rounded members of the industry. So obviously we all come from different facets of the industry, but because of that, we tend to know a lot about our operation within our sector of the industry, but not necessarily as much about all of these other sectors that are just as important and make up that beef supply chain. So we spent 3 days in Denver. The first 2 days were a very intense media training. We did on-air interviews, so in front of the camera. We did mock panel interviews, anything to just further develop who we are as spokespeople for the industry. And I will say that everybody in the group is incredibly talented, and all of us walked away with a number of takeaways throughout the time that we were together, which was really, really cool. We also had an opportunity to visit Running Creek Ranch in Elizabeth, Colorado, and they are a purebred limousine operation. So I will say I love being able to go visit other operations and again, other sectors of the industry just to see how other people do it. I think that's really important. So we spent a day there in Elizabeth, and then the next day we went up to Five Rivers Cattle Feeding in Kersey, Colorado, to their cooner yard. It's just another really eye-opening experience. And I think that's something that we should all consider or try to keep in mind, those of us from agriculture, is, like I said earlier, we know a lot about our specific operation, but that doesn't mean that we know everything there is to know about our sector of the industry, let alone all of the other sectors that are involved in the beef supply chain. So going to a feed yard of that size and that scope and seeing how efficient they are and all of the technologies that they use and all of the data that they have about their animals, I absolutely love it. I completely nerded out. That's totally my thing. So from Denver, I came home for a couple of days. I went to a wedding in Eastern Idaho, came back for a day, and then I went to St. Louis, Missouri for the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef's General Assembly meeting. So I had the honor of being their day one keynote speaker, and I really focused on just how we continue to build a resilient future. But let me back up real quick. So the USRSB, it is a group that is represented, again, of all people throughout the beef supply chain. So there are producers, both commercial and purebred. There are backgrounders. There are feed yards. There are packers and processors. There are grocery stores. And then there's also what would be called civil society. So groups like the Nature Conservancy, Ducks Unlimited, a lot of colleges and their ag programs. And they all come together to just continue to create conversations around the topic of sustainability. So a lot of it is just kind of connecting the dots at what we're already doing. There are also a number of presentations around what's new. So whether that is new technologies or things that are going to continue to create efficiencies in our industry, a lot of research projects from schools and just new data around what we do. And I will say it's all very environmentally, sustainably focused. So I had the opportunity of coming in for that day one keynote and talking more about the social sustainability side of things. So what does that mean? Obviously, we understand what the environmental sustainability side of things are. We know that we need to take care of the land and continue to steward that if we want to see our industry flourish. But we also understand that if our cow eats all the grass and there's not grass to come back to next year, that's not going to be good for our businesses. So on the social sustainability side, what happens when we don't have people coming back into our industries? We can focus all we want to on the health of the land and the health of our cattle and the health of the environment, and that's great. But if we don't have people continuing to come into our industry, that side of our industry is not going to be sustainable either. We know that we need people and we need jobs in order to see our industries continue on into the future. So I had the opportunity of just really bringing forward the ideas of how are we going to encourage people to come back to agriculture? How are we going to continue to encourage people to get involved in agriculture for the first time? How are we as an industry focused on marketing to younger generations? Because it is very different than how you market to older members of our generation. And, just really connecting the dots there and creating that conversation. And I will have to say that has to be one of the most rewarding talks that I have ever been able to give. The amount of people that came up to me afterwards and just gave me great feedback and kind words, like it really, really did mean a lot to me. If you happen to be there and you're listening to this, thank you. So then after I was in St. Louis, I came home and hallelujah, I am home for a while. Now, the purpose of me telling you all of this is I am somebody, and I'm sure I've admitted this to you guys before, back to back to back travel is not where I thrive. In fact, I feel like that's one of my weaknesses because I am somebody who I wouldn't call myself a homebody by any means, but I like being home. I really need that to kind of keep myself grounded. So when I have to travel from place to place to place and thing to thing to thing, that is a very stressful time for me. For those of you who are listening to this and you are like a territory rep of some kind, or you are constantly on the road, I have the utmost respect for you. I don't know how you do it. I want all of your tips and tricks. Please send them my way. And I tell you all of that to say, because I know that that's not necessarily where I thrive, I am really protective of the times when I do have to continually be on the go like that. So there's a reason that I'm home now for the month of May and all of June, because I know that I am going to need that in order to recharge. Because come the middle of July, I am going to be on the road every week for about 6 weeks. I get to come home for a few days or weekends between trips and events, but I know that, again, that's not where I thrive. So I'm really protective of my time. So to give you a glimpse of where things will be in July, the first thing is in the middle of July, we are going to the National High School Rodeo Finals in Rock Springs, Wyoming. We are working alongside Cinch to put on a career fair for those qualifiers. Speaking of which, if you happen to be a parent of an athlete who will be qualifying for the National High School Finals Rodeo in Rock Springs, and you work in agriculture or you own a business in agriculture and you would be interested in being part of the career fair, please let us know. I'll make sure that we include the link to do so in the show notes of this episode, so it'll be really easy to find. But we want to make sure that we have as many adults involved as possible leading those little roundtables. So anybody who works in agriculture, or if you own a business that's rooted in agriculture, we would love for you to participate. You can send me a message, but please do fill out that link. That way your information will get into the right hands. So I'm in Rock Springs for a couple of days, come home. It's our county fair week that week also. So Justin and the kids will be in that weekend's rodeo. Then I've got a trip on the books the following week. I come home for a couple of days. Then I head to Waco, Texas for Texas Farm Bureau's Thrive event. It is specifically geared towards high school seniors. There are about 150 kids in attendance. And so I get to be the keynote speaker at that event. And then from there, I fly to Pueblo, Colorado for a Western Sports Foundation clinic. I come back home for a few days, and then I am off to Dallas, Texas for Wessa Market. So that is about 4 or 5 weeks of travel. And looking ahead, I know that that is the end of summer. If I'm not going to get to spend my time with my family, then I want to make sure that I can spend all possible time with them while I do have that availability. So for the month of May, month of June, I am not traveling. The other thing that I am not doing in July and August is scheduling any podcast interviews. So we will still have the podcast and you guys will be able to listen every week, but I have done the pre-work ahead of time to where I'm not going to be scheduling any interviews in that time. So last week, I actually interviewed 13 different guests, and we are scheduled out through the end of October, which was absolutely wild. It was a huge undertaking, but I knew I needed to do that in order to take something off of my plate in those months where I was hardly going to have enough time to repack my bag, let alone schedule those really important things. I've also really focused on doing that with other aspects of our business, right? What can I do ahead of time, like right now when I am home, so that when time comes in July and August, I can be really protective about those little windows of time that I do have, filling them with what brings me joy and what is going to be good for my family. So the other thing that I do, and this kind of goes back to the speaking side of things. So again, I know that being gone and traveling isn't necessarily something that I thrive at. It brings me joy, like a stressful joy. I absolutely love getting to speak in front of different groups, but I know that it's really hard on my family when I'm gone. It's hard on our operation when I'm gone. It's hard on Of the West when I'm gone. So I'm really particular about how often I do that. So probably about September of last year, I made the intention that I was only going to accept one in-person speaking opportunity every month. And by setting that intention or those boundaries, it made it a lot easier to say no, because I am absolutely somebody, if people ask me to do something, I want to say yes. And if you are like that, you also know that then you'll say yes, and you'll say yes, and you'll say yes. But then that's really hard on you, and it can be hard on your family and your businesses. So by protecting my time and kind of setting that boundary, I will say things have been really good this year. I don't necessarily feel guilty about being gone when I'm gone, because I know that I've been very intentional around setting that time. And so I'm with my family more days than I'm not. And that is something that really, really fuels me. But mentally, it's really helped me, because then when I have to tell somebody no, which I still don't necessarily, like, it doesn't make me feel good to tell somebody no, but at the same time, I don't feel bad about telling them no. So basically, it comes down to just being very selective about what I'm willing to do and what I'm not willing to do. And it has served me very, very well, because we are booked for 2024 for all of our speaking engagements. And we're actually now booking events into the spring of 2025. If you did hope to have me or Of the West in person at an event, just know that there are opportunities in 2025, but unfortunately for 2024, there aren't any. That being said, though, there are still some virtual opportunities available. I do have a separate calendar for those, because again, I know I'm only going to be gone for in-person events once every month, but my virtual speaking opportunities do have a little bit more availability. But anyways, I know that was kind of a long-winded conversation about what we've been up to lately and how I've been able to protect my time. But I really wanted to share that just because I know we're going into these summer months, and that's one of those things that there can be so much between spending time with your kids because they're home for school and all of their extracurricular activities, and still maintaining time for you and your spouse and your career or your business or multiple businesses. It can be really challenging. And I just want to share with you that you can absolutely find a way to do it all, if you will. You just can't do it all at the same time. And you've got to feel really good about what you are doing and the kind of effort that you're putting out, and finding ways to prioritize what is good for you, what's good for your family and your time, and just really setting those boundaries and sticking to them and protecting all of that. It's absolutely helped me. I know it's going to be crucial for a lot of us in these upcoming months. And I will also say too, if you want to send me a DM or an email and just chat more about it, I am absolutely happy to. I don't have all the answers. I will never claim to have all of the answers, but it's definitely something that I have really learned over the last couple of years, just as we have continued to get busier. So it's something that I've been very focused on. But with that, I guess that's really all I've got for you guys today. I hope you had a good takeaway from this. Or if you have something that you want to share with me that has worked for you, please do. I absolutely love to hear your guys' thoughts and ideas and continue to create conversations around these topics. So thank you guys for being here, for listening. And as always, we'll see you back here next week.
If you loved this episode, do us a favor and share it with someone else who might find just as much value in it as you did. We're on a mission to continue to grow and strengthen the future of agriculture and Western industries, and you spreading the word helps us make more of a positive impact. It also makes a big difference when you take a minute to go rate and review the show. We can't thank you enough for listening, for sharing, and for loving Ag and Western as much as we do. We'll see you back here for our next episode.